Hey there, it's Walt. So they say that the hardest step is the first step, whether it be for a run or a product or program launch or writing a book or an article, creating a piece of art. Taking that first step, they say, is the hardest. I actually think it's the step before the first step. I decided I wanted to take a run today. That's before I saw the forecast. And I wanted to take a run because I like to run. And I got to the parking lot here, and it was raining so hard. And I sat in the car. I sat in the car for about 5 full minutes. No kidding, 5 full minutes. I'm looking at the rain pour against the windshield, and I'm thinking, I don't need to run today. And I'm gonna get wet, and I'm gonna get cold, and it's gonna be miserable, and I'm gonna be miserable, and it will hurt, and all of the stories that we tell ourselves I told in that 5 minutes. And then I took my shirt off, and I opened up the car door, and I started out, and it was raining. It rained hard. And then I got up into the woods, and it was raining less, and the canopy of the forest was covering, and it was actually pretty pleasant. There were no people, there were no bugs, and it was actually a fairly pleasant run when all is said and done. And now I'm back to the parking lot, and it's drizzling just a little bit, but it was a wonderful experience. And we do create a lot of stories before we begin anything. And I think for me, it's in that thinking and worrying and perseverating and hand-wringing that I tend to get caught up. That, if I could just push through all of that mind stuff, all of those stories, if I could just push through that story and just get into action, it would be just fine. And it is the action that leads to more action. So often we feel like we need to feel like we need to do something. That is, that we believe that we need to be motivated to do something. And the truth is, we rarely feel motivated to do much at all in terms of anything that requires effort or exhilaration or exercise. There's not much motivation. There was no motivation today. And what's true is that motivation usually follows action. It doesn't precede action. Motivation usually follows the first step after the first step. That once you get going, you feel better. Once you get into the writing project, the writing begins to flow. Once you get into the copy begins to flow. Once you get into action in the woods, on the trail, it begins to flow. But it never happens unless you start. It never happens if you get stuck in that step before the first step, which is all about the mind stuff that goes on. Martin Luther King Jr. has that wonderful line that says, you don't need to see the whole staircase. You don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to take that first step in faith. I think you don't need to see the whole staircase. You don't even need to see the first step. You just need to take the step before the step and get into action. And then everything will begin to unfold. And that's when the magic happens. When you're out there beyond that point of indecision, beyond the stories, and you're in action and you're creating and you're manifesting and it's all unfolding. That's where the magic is. So, when you're faced with the step before the first step, just push through and get into action. Make it a great rest of the day, great rest of the week. Talk soon.